Alrighty, so who can draft better, me or your club? I went and had a look at my final mocks from the 23 and 24 drafts and compared them to your clubs. Now, granted, I only did a top 40 for 23 and top 50 for 24, so I'll only be taking your club's picks into consideration that were also in those ranges. And let's just see how it stacks up, because when I do my mocks, it's not what I think clubs will do, it's what I would do. Adelaide in the range took Daniel Curtin, Charlie Edwards, Oscar Ryan, and Sid Draper. I'd mocked them Darcy Wilson, George Stevens, Tu Giath, and of course I had Sid Draper as well, which cancels each other out. So basically we're coming down to this as Curtin versus Wilson. Because George Stevens, although I'm a massive fan of him, we've only been given 2 more games than Edwards and Ryan have. So it's now going down to, well, what would you rather do? Now, to be fair, I think the answer to this is either. I don't think Adelaide or St Kilda would want to do a deal that would send Curtin and Darcy Wilson to the other club. I really don't. Wilson is an absolute star. Curtin finished last year off in spectacular style, and both add the qualities that both clubs were looking for, not only at the time, but moving forward. Yes, I really wish I could be really biased here and say, well, George Stevens is enough for me to be able to tip the scales into my direction. But honestly, I think both clubs are happy here. So I think the winner is either side. Brisbane took Logan Morris, Levi Ashcroft, Sam Marshall, and Ty Gallup. I gave them Luamon Lual, Luke Lloyd, who ended up on their list anyway, and then Ashcroft and Marshall because of the father-son and the academy bid. I didn't have Ty Gallup in my top 50, didn't expect a bid to come through. Not many did, to be perfectly honest, but Brisbane win this so far, like the length of Flemington twice is the gap right now. Logan Morris and Ty Gallup, of course, your 2 forward stars of last year's flag. Morris, of course, won in 24 as well, which is outstanding work, but I have nothing really else to offer here. They also got Lloyd outside of my draft range, so you can also sort of give them that, cancel that out as well. So now you're asking yourself, well, it's your 2 premiership tall forwards versus a guy that got delisted from Essendon. Yeah, I think I'm going to give this one to Brisbane if I'm being honest with you. Carlton and I both had Ashton Moyer and Ben Camporeale, and Carlton drafted Billy Wilson, Jagger Smith, and Harry O'Farrell. I drafted them Logan Morris and Finn O'Sullivan. As you can see, my bid for Camporeale at 36 versus 46 meant that they were able to get the extra pick in that landed them Harry O'Farrell, who I'm a fan of. But let's be honest, Logan Morris wins this for me in a massive way. And also, just quietly, how well would that have aged with Curnow out the door to Sydney? Kind of like Danaher leaving Brisbane, letting him be the number 1 tall forward, and look how that went. Now, granted, he wouldn't be the number 1 at Carlton. That would still be Harry Mackay. But yeah, pretty happy with this. I'm not going to lie to you. Now, of course, for Carlton, they're going to say, and rightly so, that Morris wasn't still on the board here. But that comes with the ebbs and flows of doing mock drafts. You kind of got to live with it, I suppose. Now, granted, Jagger and Harry doing ACLs, albeit at very different times of the year, does not help their cause here. Finn O'Sullivan played every game, was able to show a tenacity and class that I was a fan of. Didn't find the footy as much as I think some would have suspected, even though he had a pretty interrupted draft year. But I'm still going to give myself the win here. But if we were redoing this video in 2 years' time, I think Jagger and Harry have got cases to lift up Carlton's prospects here. But Logan Morris to the Blues is just a massive win for Daz. Collingwood took Harry DiMattia and Tu Giath and didn't have Sydney match a bid on Joel Cochran. I gave them Will Green, Cale Gerine, Harry O'Farrell, and Sam Davidson. Collingwood are very weird here because on paper, I mean, I win, let's be honest. As in, which group would you rather have? You'd rather have mine. But would they have played O'Farrell? They haven't played Cochran. Now, granted, I liked O'Farrell more coming out of the draft year, to be honest. But like the Sam Davidson one, are we 100% sure they would have played him? They had side bottom. They had Will Hoskin-Elliott. They had Lipinski on a wing, even though he got moved to a high half forward role throughout, pretty much the start of the year. He still played wing a little bit, but was probably more known as a high half forward. I'd like to think he would have played because that would make a win for Daz much more pronounced, if I'm being honest with you. But I can kind of feel like Collingwood fans go, no, we've got massive faith in DiMattia and you absolutely have the right to be like that, but we just haven't seen him. So it's kind of like a check back in 2 years kind of thing, but this isn't 2 years from now. This is now. And that's another tick for Daz. And then drafted Nate Caddy and Luamon Lual, Isaac Kako, Cale Gerine, and Angus Clark. I gave them Connor O'Sullivan, Zane Zakostelski, and Cooper Simpson. Isaac Kako, Tom Gross, Thomas Sims, and Hugh Boxall. Now, let's be real. Like the Angus Clark versus probably Boxall cancel each other out. Like it's an either. I can probably go with you on that. Kako obviously cancels each other out. Zach Ostelski's not getting a game for Brisbane. Woody at the Bombers, I'm not really sure, but they didn't really play Jerine either. I know they're not the same position on the ground, but they weren't, key position players. We haven't really seen them all that much, so how can you tell? So I'm happy to say that they cancel each other out as well. So effectively, you've got Caddy v. O'Sullivan, you've got Kako versus Clark, and then you can add in Gross and Sims. I still feel like I'd probably take mine, but I'm not going with a win for me. I'm going to go the Bombers, even though Luamon is no longer on the list. And here is the reason why. They have enough of the guys that I gave them on the list already that I don't think would make a whole lot of sense. Now, Simpson on a wing would be a tick, but does drafting Hugh Boxall not have them take a Dyson Sharp this year? I'm not particularly sure. Again, Sims and Jerine and Zach Ostelski, do they really need another key defender? I would probably argue and no. We didn't see a whole lot of Gross this year, even though I was a bigger fan than where he ended up being drafted. I think the Caddy v. O'Sullivan conversation isn't either, and I think both Essendon and Geelong got a win out of that. Now, I love Connor O'Sullivan, I really do, as again, I'm biased towards key defenders, but Caddy works for what they need. He's athletic, he's exciting, he and Kako are going to be dominant forces for a decade. So I think in terms of what Essendon want for their list, I think they're very happy with their group. I'm not 100% convinced that they would want my group because, again, you've got Hobbs before he was delisted, but you've still got Sardis on the list. McGrath played as a midfielder. Does Boxall help in that regard? We're not really sure what they would be getting out of their key position players. Angus Clark looks really good, and I think they made the right decision positionally to go after Caddy as well. So I'll give this to the Bombers. I'm not super happy about it, but again, other list decisions are going to be a major factor here. But the quality of player, I think I took more best 23 guys, but the Bombers did the right thing for themselves. Freo took Cooper Simpson, Murphy Reid and Charlie Nichols. I had mocked them Phoenix Gothard and Joe Berry. Freo win this by the length of Flemington. It's not even funny. Yeah, more than happy to sacrifice this one if I'm being completely honest with you. How Murphy Reid was still on the board is extraordinary, as we know. And I did go with the forward of centre player correctly in Joe Berry, so I'm not kicking myself for that. But yeah, Cooper Simpson we've seen a lot more of than Phoenix Gothard at this point. So Freo can absolutely take the dub here as they look to add another top quality youngster, probably adding Toby one and then Luca Ryder coming through as a rookie selection. Geelong took Connor O'Sullivan, Mitch Edwards, Sean Manor and Jay Polkinghorn, and I had mocked them Riley Sanders, Ari Schoenmaker, Lockie Jacques, and my man Jacko. Yeah, look, Geelong win this as well. Connor O'Sullivan down back is just an A-plus get. I know he was exposed a little bit in the finals, but if he was on your list of problems or the top of your list of the problems that Geelong had in that grand final performance, you're kidding yourself, to be honest. We haven't seen a whole lot of Mitch Edwards, even though he was highly rated, and I rated him pretty highly as well. But the Sean Manor pick does a whole lot of heavy lifting here. Absolutely. Now, of course, if they go my direction and they needed Riley Sanders here, or they netted themselves Riley Sanders, who I know was off the board at this point, the Bulldogs obviously picked him up, and don't worry, we'll talk more about the Bulldogs a little bit later on. But Schoenmaker has been delisted. We haven't seen a whole lot of Lockie Jacques and Jack, so Geelong take this one out pretty comfortably. Sean Manor is a ridiculously clever player, and even though we haven't seen anything of Jay Polkinghorn yet, I'm pretty comfortable conceding this one to the Cats. Gold Coast took Jed Walter, Ethan Reid, Jake Rogers, Will Graham, Leo Lombard, and Cooper Bell, and I mocked them the first 5 out of those 6 players. And can we also talk about just for a second just how bloody good those bids look in the regard? So I went 1 earlier, 2 later. The Will Graham one a little bit knocked out, and Leo was perfection, which we like in a big way. Yeah, either for the pure and simple fact that they didn't use, or they haven't used, I should say, Cooper Bell. Everything else is the same. I don't really know what you want from me here. GWS took Phoenix Gothard, James Leake, Ollie Hannaford, Harry Oliver, Cody Angrove, and my man Jack. I gave them Caleb Windsor, Harry DeMattia, Taj Houghton, Cooper Hines, Jasper Alger, Josh Murphy, and Xavier Ivisic. I mean, I'm going to take the win here. Caleb Windsor doing, again, a lot of heavy lifting here for Daz, by the way, who I believe would have been off the board by the time the GWS made their selection of Gothard, by the way. But we've already had Gothard, I showed you in the Fremantle example. I had him mocked at 39, and they took him at 12, which could have made me look really stupid. Windsor doing a lot of lifting there. Houghton fell in my mock draft compared to Richmond, who I think took him at 12. So, again, you can forgive the Giants for that. But Cooper Hines showed some really good signs of the Bulldogs. Jasper Algo looks like he's getting a lot of love from Richmond fans, which we like in a big, big way. GWS is drafting the last couple of years with top-end talent, which I know is not actually top-end, but 5 top 25 selections in the last 2 drafts, and none of them played in the elimination final. Well, that might not be great long term. Hawthorn took Nick Watson, Will McCabe, and Noah Mraz. I gave them Daniel Curtin, Will McCabe, and James Barrett. Of course, McCabe cancels himself out. Barrett versus Mraz cancel themselves out. Key defender, nailed it, just the wrong dude. Let's be honest. Watson versus Curtin. Now, Wizards better, and Adelaide people are going to hate me saying that, and they're going to think I'm biased, but it's objectively true. However, I don't think Adelaide accept a trade if Hawthorn said, we'll give you Watson for Curtin. And the Hawks are definitely not doing it either. And I still stand by the fact that Curtin would have been a good pick for the Hawks. Where's, outside of midfielder, where's our biggest weakness? The wing. What did Curtin do at the back end of last year? Took the piss on a wing and went through the midfield. So I don't think that was a bad selection at all. And with the Ginnivan inclusion, the fit didn't seem right. The Hawks, of course, proved me wrong there. But the Wizards kicked 11 goals in 5 finals games, which is more than Roughhead and Rioli combined in their first 5s. They kicked 10 between them. Bruce kicked 7. In terms of guys 2000s onwards for the Hawks, Watson's 11 is equal with Gunston and just behind Bud. Well, not just, double, but still, I'm going either. And Hawthorn fans, you can hate me for that, but I stand by the analysis at the time, and I stand by it now. None of us would be disappointed if we drafted Curtin with the output that he has delivered so far. Watson's output's been elite and better. I'm not denying that for a moment. I'm not copying this as an L, though. Melbourne took Caleb Windsor, Colton Tolstrup, Harvey Langford, and Xavier Lindsay. I gave them Nate Caddy, James Leake, Harvey Langford, and Harry Armstrong. Now, granted, if they went down both of my paths, they would have 4 first-round key forwards on their list, which is ridiculous, granted. But because they didn't get Caddy in the 23 draft, which is why I gave them Armstrong in the 24, if they listened to me and took Caddy at the time, I would not have obviously given them Armstrong, but that's kind of the ebbs and flows of mock drafting, if you will. In terms of player quality, I think mine is better, definitely. But again, when it comes to the strategic side of it, is what it is. Tolstrup hasn't shown as much as maybe we'd like him to. Like, Caddy would be unbelievable, but are you giving up Windsor for Nate Caddy in terms of what Melbourne are trying to build right now? I mean, it's hard. You know, Caddy without Peter Wright down there or without an experienced forward doesn't quite look like that premier guy, and he's not meant to, by the way. So would that be the same at Melbourne? It's pretty hard to say. Xavier Lindsay looks like a really good player, but, Harry Armstrong looks really good as well. But I think not taking him worked for the Ds as well. And then, of course, Tolstrup and Leake. I mean, Tolstrup we've had more exposure to. Melbourne could use that taller intercept defender, wing-ish type of guy, probably, but their defense looks pretty good on paper, even without Stephen May, who looks like he's going to be a depth piece. So I think I've got to give Melbourne the win here. I don't blame them in the slightest, even though 4v4 on the table, I still really like the players that I picked as well. North Melbourne took Colby McKercher, Zane Dersma, Taylor Goad, Will Dawson, Riley Hardiman, Finn O'Sullivan, and Matt Whitlock. I gave them McKercher, Dersma, Lance Collard, Mitch Edwards, Ollie Murphy, Alex Taru, and Jack Whitlock. So positionally, you're looking at it like, well, I gave them a ruckman in Edwards. They took a ruckman in Goad. I gave them a key defender in Ollie Murphy. They took Will Dawson. Now, Collard v. Riley Hardiman wins that, let's be honest. And North were able to replenish their small forward stocks in other ways. Hanson Jr., Jacob Constanti, who I know isn't exactly a star, but they were able to do it with other moves. And Hardiman looks really good as well, so I'll give them the tick for that. But Finn O'Sullivan and Matt Whitlock versus Alex Taru and Jack, you can have your centre-half back of the future and a pretty decent and looking centre-half forward. I thought he showed signs. Jack did at Port Adelaide last year. I mean, Finn was good. Don't get me wrong. I'm taking my group, though. I really am. Hardiman is the tick. Absolutely. I still think Taru and Jack make up for the Finn O'Sullivan and Matt, to be honest. And in mine, I did trade down, by the way. So I think I actually gave North an asset instead of giving up their first rounder next year or in this year's draft. I'm going to take this one. Dub for Daz. Port Adelaide had none in both drafts 2 years ago, but Joe Berry, Jack Whitlock, and Christian Moraes is who they took. I gave them Shanahan, Angus Clark, Noah Mraz, and Archer Day Wicks. So, again, if we're looking at it, either kind of makes sense with what Angus Clark was able to do with the Bombers. We don't know if he was going to be able to do that at Port. Clark only got a go as a depth piece because of the Essendon injuries. So again, hard to say, but could Port Adelaide use a wingman, which is what Clark is? Yeah, they really could. Could they use a centre half back in Miraz? Now, of course, a couple of Port Adelaide fans are going, we do have a couple of youngsters down there. So maybe you could go with, not really. I think Moraes is better than Archie Day Wicks. I think it's just what he's shown. So I'll give the tick to Port Adelaide there. So Whitlock versus Shanahan. And you know how much I love Joe. But overall, I still feel like, again, small forward for Berry, that still worked out well. Whitlock and Moraes, because Port are getting good value out of those, a draft in. I'm not going to go with, I like my players more, therefore I'm going to give myself the dub. I will concede, though, that it's not an automatic win for Port, so I'll settle for either. Richmond took Kane McAuliffe, Sam Lawler, Josh Smiley, Taj Houghton, Johnny Fall, Luke Traynor, Harry Armstrong, and Thomas Sims. I gave them Taylor Goad, Sam Lawler, Jagger Smith, Toby Travalia, Bo Allen, Jonty Fall, Alex Dodson, and Matt Whitlock. Can you tell I really wanted to give Richmond a ruckman post Toby Ned Curvis? Because Goad and then Dodson were the guys that I went with there. Look, this is really hard to do because Jagger did his ACL, of course. Now, if you wanted some clarification, the reason why Richmond have 2 here but not in the other one is I'd done the deal with North to swap those around, which is how North took Taru at 7, and they, of course, took Jagger Smith. With Smiley's quad problems, unfortunately for Josh, I think that was a pretty win-win trade for both those players, but of course Jagger did his ACL, so who knows there. But overall, Richmond are absolutely happy with what they've done. I think this is just way too early to tell. What I will say, though, is that if I went with the guys that showed sort of the least, it is my side. Dodson didn't really get a run on it, and it's going to be really hard. Rowan Marshall and Tom DeConing there to see what he's got. We didn't really get a good look at Matt Whitlock. Bo Allen, played a little bit, but struggled with his body and some personal stuff throughout the year. So Richmond are ahead right now, but I still think I've got plenty of time to catch up. But for now, I'll concede that the winner here is the Tigers. St Kilda took Darcy Wilson, Lance Collard, Angus Hasty, Toby Travalia, Alex Taru, James Barrett, and Hugh Boxall. I gave them Riley Hardiman, Charlie Edwards, Josh Smiley, Xavier Lindsay, Adrian Cole, and Bailey McKenzie. If you even try to come up with an argument on why I should win this one, you're delusional and out of your mind. Well played, St Kilda. You go and get yourselves your centre half back of the future in Taru. Travalia looks really good. You got really good value out of Boxall as well. Darcy Wilson falling into your lap like 6 picks later than I had him mocked, which is outstanding. Lance Collard's been a little bit of a naughty boy, but can hopefully get himself right and prove to be a really good small forward option with Higgins, Butler, and Liam Ryan out there as well. And Angus Hasty showed some really nice signs at the back end of the year. So the Saints win this comfortably. The Swans took Will Green, Caden Cleary, Jesse Detoli, Ned Bowman, and Riley Bice. I gave them Colton Tolstrup, Caden Cleary, Luke Traynor, Jesse Detoli, and Joel Cochran, who, of course, they didn't match the bid on and ended up going to the Pies, that being Joel, of course. Caden and Jesse cancel each other out, obviously. So you're looking at this as Green versus Tolstrup. We've seen more of Tolstrup, but has it been enough for me to justify the win there? Green as depth behind Grundy. Got no real problems with that in the slightest, so we can kind of go with a cancellation if you want to. I'm happy with that. So then it goes to Ned Bowman v. Cochran. They kind of cancel each other out. Haven't seen enough of them to have a fully formed opinion, of course. So it's now, effectively, Riley versus Luke Traynor. And the reason why I think the Swans, or you could go with either, but I'm probably going to give the victory to the Swans here in this one, is if they do take Luke Traynor, they probably don't get Jai Sarong on the cheap. So they effectively got Riley Bice. If you're comparing the two, Sydney v. me, they effectively got Riley Bice for nothing. They took him at that pick, and they still get a guy who can play the Luke Traynor role for, peanuts, pennies on the dollar in terms of Jai Sarong, which is a win there. So I'll give this one to the Swans, but I'm not too upset with how this one's worked out for me. I really like Luke Traynor. West Coast fans, look away now. You took Harley Reid, Archer Reid, Clay Hall, Bo Allen, Job Shanahan, Tom Gross, and Lucas Grego. I gave you Harley Reid, Archie Roberts, Archer Reid, and Will Dawson via a trade, Murphy Reid, and Harrison Oliver. I'm really sorry that I'm not Matt Clark right now, which I feel like a lot of West Coast fans would want. Yeah, I clearly had Archie Roberts rated a lot higher than a lot of other clubs did because of how he ended up at the Bombers beyond the scope of my mock draft there. Of course, he went beyond pick 40, which was what that original draft was for me. But Archie Reid both got, yay. But Will Dawson, you got another centre-half back option. Now, of course, the argument could be you went and picked up Tyler Young. Tyler Young's better, but positionally we could say cancel each other out. Shanahan, star, pick 30, you killed it. Would you trade him for Murphy Reed? Probably. But with Oscar Allen going, it'd be Jake Waterman and Archer Reed. Not great. But overall, yeah, I'm still absolutely taking the W here. And what that would mean would probably be Aiden Schubert would be at West Coast with pick 2. It'd be Dersma and Big Aiden. We'll see how that ages later on. And the Bulldogs took Riley Sanders, Jordan Croft, Cooper Hines, Lockie Jacques, and Josh Dolan. I gave them Nick Watson, Jordan Croft, Ollie Hannaford, Hamish Davis, Christian Moraes, and Luke Urquhart. Not really sure what I was thinking with the double midfielder then, even though they'd taken Riley Sanders the year before. So come on, Daz. But I could probably work my way around it. Moraes could be used as a high half forward. Riley West did that really well. And now what? With Waitman coming back, it's West and Timu Riley Wests, I suppose. But Croft, of course, cancel each other out. I liked what I saw from Hines, so he's got Hannaford covered. You could probably argue Hamish Davis as well, but maybe they're equal. I'm not really going to argue with anyone there. Haven't seen a whole lot of Jacques. We saw Josh Dolan. He was fine. We can kind of go equal with Moraes there. We didn't see Luke Urquhart, so I can kind of cancel him out as well. So now you're looking at this, I suppose, as Sanders v. Watson. And can you imagine Cody Waitman and Nick Watson in the same group together? Jesus, that would be frightening, especially considering, of course, Watson does his best work on the ground and Waitman wants to jump at the footy as a smaller player. Would be a frightening concept, I'm not going to lie to you. And if Sanders ends up going to Tassie, and of course Adelaide pursued him pretty hard and the Bulldogs didn't let him go, this could be aging relatively well for me. In terms of the win, I'm kind of going to go with either, even though Watson is better than Sanders. I really will go with that. But Davis, Moraes, Urquhart, Jacques, Dolan, yeah, they are what they are, I suppose. But Cooper Hines showed some really nice signs. I think there's a lot athletically to work with there. I feel like I went 1 A+ selection and then not a lot else. I think Riley Sanders could be A-, B+, and Cooper Hines could definitely be a B to B+. So it's probably me, let's be honest, because Watson's the better player, but he was off the board at the Bulldogs pick, so I'll lock in an either. Overall, pretty damn happy with that. I'm not going to lie to you. Feeling pretty good about it, which is nice. Some clubs absolutely stiffed. Freo fans, not massive fans of me right now, and that would be absolutely justified, but this has been a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed this retrospective and look forward to my mock draft, which will be dropping on Monday evening. So thank you very much, guys, for watching. I really appreciate it. I will see you in the next video, or go check out a previous one if you're interested. Click the subscribe button and see you later.